19 hours 31, and you tuned into the radio with a difference. Yes, 99.1 and 99.5 FM. Kaiju Radio for you. It is time for Room 592 this evening. At the helm of the program is none other than Dr. Yog Mahadeo, alongside senior journalist of Kaiju News, Leonard Gildarie. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, dear.
Good evening to you. Leonard, how are you today, sir?
Very, 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 very busy. And what can I say? I missed you today, man. 2 o'clock, you left it all to me.
As Joshua would have said, and let me say good evening to Kevin Smith, who's with you there, our technical guy, and Joshua too. As Joshua would have said, in your case, Leonard, no rest for the wicked, but in his case and Kevin's case, is no rest for the willing. So, ladies and gentlemen, viewers and listeners from all across Guyana, the Caribbean, and the wider world, welcome to Room 592, where we unleash the truth with yours truly and senior journalist Leonard Gildarie. As we welcome you to tonight's show, I just want to ensure we get some housekeeping done. We are waiting to be joined by Mr. Tarron Khemraj, and also Mr. Sase Gunraj will be here very, very shortly to give us an elections update. While we are awaiting that, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to let you know, and Leonard, in saying that, let me apologize to you for having you run the ship alone today, but I'm sure you did a very good job. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to share with you the following information. Every night that we have Room 592, please feel very welcome to send us either a tweet, a WhatsApp, or inbox me. Send me a WhatsApp or send me a tweet or send it to Leonard Gildarie. And every night we are going to get one or two of your messages being read, and we will probably deal with the content of your message. If you want to share a thought or you want to say something, please let us know. And as we have discussed every day on our daytime show, we continue to look at the elections, what's happening in elections. We do that during the day, and we continue to look at COVID-19. As we get into more of the Room 592's discussion here at night, we try to bring on a guest or two, and we discuss matters pertaining to not just politics, but the economy, health, and a lot of other things. We are looking at discussing such topics that could create a healthy discussion across the country. Leonard, we have had a lot of feedback from many persons who are enjoying the discussions we have been stimulating here in Room 592.
Yes, very true. And let me just butt in here a little. I think a few moments back, we just got a lot of calls here for Room 592. I think a couple of fire tenders went down to the convention center there. I'm not sure whether you heard it from where you are, but they would have been complaining about what is happening, some kind of smoke or fire, false alarm it turns out, but there were a lot of nervous people there at the convention center.
Correct. And I mean, you expect these things, but we want to call on people, let us be responsible and let us ensure we do everything necessary to get the recount go as speedily as possible. And there has been a lot of developments, Leonard. I don't know if you want to just take a minute and, educate everyone here who might not have been on the 2 o'clock show. The interview you had with Her Excellency, the Ambassador of the United States to Guyana, Mrs. Sarah Ann Lynch.
Well, I do thank you for that, Yog. Well, let me tell you, we raised a range of issues with her, including is the ambassadors or the embassies here from the Western countries overstepping the boundaries when it comes to the sovereignty of this country. She says, no, we are going to speak up as we see the issues. We are going to observe and we are going to speak up. She's made that very clear. But she's also pointed out, based on that question that we asked, that, when you look at the statements that would have been coming not only from the observers group and from the bilaterals, let's say from Norway and France and so on and so forth, they're very consistent because what they would have seen, they all saw together with their own eyes. and everybody basically wrote the same thing. So she pointed that out very clearly and says, we're not just here to observe, but we will speak up. And she said that I'm speaking here on behalf of myself. The issue was also raised with regard to sanctions. We're now going through some of the comments that she would have made, but she says the time is not right for that at the moment. She hoping that it does not come to that. But however, it comes back to when you're talking about sanctions, you're talking about individual sanctions, visa restrictions, and other things, the freezing of properties, which is consistent with what would have been coming from the EU and other nations, like I think Britain would have, although they did not get into that when we had our interview with High Commissioner Greg Quinn. But she would have also been asked about the Carter Center. And there were several things that was coming out with the Carter Center. She's still hoping, I think, the U.S. is preparing to write to the government, if they have not already done so, asking that they really seriously consider the Carter Center to come on, to be given permission to come here. As we speak, there was a flight, I think this morning, one of the Omni planes, 767, it brought in some workers for Exxon. And why is this important? It left this afternoon like about 120 persons. It came in with about 80 persons. Why is that significant? Because you would have seen, I think it is a statement that came from the 5 senators, and it made its way into the public domain today, addressed to President David Granger. And what that statement is basically raising is, but you're spending, or you're given special permission or authorizations by the authorities or whoever is giving it for flights to land in Guyana, but this particular flight that is coming with the observer to oversee a very important process, they're not getting that permission. So it was pointed out in that letter. So here this afternoon we have another flight with, or within the last couple hours, another flight who would have come in and left with Exxon workers. So we have to put that in context.
The airport is open.
Well, not the commercial flight, but the special authorized flights.
That's what I mean.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
So
thank you for that, Mr. Gildarie. Thank you so much. And we have our professor of economics, Mr. Tarron Khemraj, has joined us. So viewers and listeners, let's get on with our program tonight. Just to let you know, we're hoping to be joined by Mr. Sase Gunraj, Commissioner Sase Gunraj, to give us an update as at the end of today, coming from the Artichoke Convention Center. While we await his joining us, let's get on to our discussion tonight. As we promise our viewers and listeners, we want to talk a little bit about not just economics, plain old boring economics, but we want to talk about the political economy. Here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we have Professor Tarron Khemraj, who is a professor of economics and international studies at the New College of Florida, the Honors College of the State University System of Florida. He is also a columnist at the Stabroek News, Guyana, and he has previously been a candidate for the AFC. Mr. Khemraj, let me repeat that for those of you who don't know. He has been part of the Guyanese system for a long time, and he was a candidate for the Alliance for Change in the 2011 general elections. Mr. Khemraj holds a PhD from the New School of Social Research in New York and has published numerous papers in monetary economics and political economics. Mr. Khemraj, welcome, Professor, Doctor, welcome to our show here tonight, sir.
Oh, thank you for the invitation, and I thanks to Kaito Radio in general.
Thank you.
I know you guys are doing a lot of good work down there. Keep it up.
Thank you. And so let's get right into the discussion then. Viewers and listeners, for those of you who may not have been reading Mr. Khemraj's article, I want to tell you, follow his articles. He does not conform to what you will call the old school thinking. His research on economics, his writings on the economy and economic thoughts are out of the box. They're brand new. They're based on modern type thinking, modern day research. And so you would see him thinking along a particular line. And I want to start with one of those lines that he wrote in an article. Professor, you said recently that the political party that wins the March 2020 election gets to determine how the future oil revenue will be distributed. Consequently, and here is the interesting phrase, Leonard, Professor had said that consequently, the cost of losing an election is higher in this oil-based Guyana. And so Professor has reminded everyone to avert, and listen to these words carefully, ladies and gentlemen. He has said to avert backdoor spending of oil revenues that would fuel ethnically charged political discontent, other sufficient reform is needed from the realm of monetary economics. Professor, let's cast aside these big words, sir. Preach it, teach it, educate us.
Well, you've said it accurately. You know, the losing an election in Guyana has always been costly for the loser because of the way the economic system has always been structured. A lot of the opportunities that people expect to enjoy are unfortunately tied to your political fortunes, right? And so, you know, we have this concept. What do we mean by cost? You know, when we think of cost, you think, okay, it costs $20 to make this this bag, or the cost of something is how much you pay for it at the store. But economists look at cost differently. The cost is what you give up when you get something, right? So if you bought a shoe for $100, what else? What is the next best thing you could have done with that $100? That's the cost, right? It's always, and the same idea can be transported into the political realm, as I have done, which is if you lose the election, then it's costly because you are foregoing various types of rewards and privileges. For example, you might may not get a job because your party did not win the election. It might be some privileged position in the civil service. That's a cost to that person who lost, right? It's a cost in the sense that you may not get that scholarship because some person who is more connected in some kind of network to the winning party gets that. You may also, it might be costly in the sense that you may not get a particular contract you hope for, right? Mm-hmm. So you may say that every political system has winners and losers, right? So you're going to have costly losers, but in the Guyana situation, it's different because unfortunately, given the way the society evolved, there's a lot of divergence along ethnic lines. You know, it so turned out that many of the losers are primarily from one group, and many of the winners are from the other group. Now, this does not discount the fact that there are people who are willing to operate across the divide, and that is true. Some people say that this is a growing number, a growing percentage of the population. I have to tell you, I did not see it in the last election, and I haven't seen it in previous elections. What I did was I went on the Fabric News website, and they were publishing the statements of poll, right, as you know.
Correct.
And if you do a correlation with the village and the demographic pattern of the village, you get the impression that this last election was as divided or more divided than the 2011 election and the 2015 election. You know, there was a large percentage of voters that came over to the Alliance for Change, and as you guys know the story.
Yeah.
So to put this in more economic and political economy lens, it turns out that the losers are primarily from one group and the winners are primarily from one group. And that's really what we mean. Right. So as I said, Guyanese elections have always been costly to the loser, but it's more costly now because there's just perception that you're going to have a lot of oil revenues. And if you lose government, well, then you don't get to spend those revenues on what you feel is fit. It might be towards close-knit family members, close-knit friends, and of course you have to distribute to other people as well. But and that's what I mean by it's costly to lose the election. And you mentioned sufficient reforms. You need to have certain. How do we break this very serious deficiency, right? A malaise. It's an unfortunate situation, and how to break it. And that's really where a lot of this discussion, I don't mean here tonight, but this is where I hope our country will go in general.
So Professor, you mentioned something interesting a few moments back. You said that the society is so ethnically divided, and it's been borne out during this last elections. But I want to just get your remarks on the following. The fact is that the PPP cannot win without crossover votes. Neither can the AFC-APNO. So there is a growing segment of voters from either of the major ethnic groupings that are shifting depending on independent thinking. I mean, what's your thoughts to that?
We can only decide that if we had a proper census in 2012, which was supposed to be 2010. You might have read about the fiasco with the census. We don't really know for sure what is the ethnic distribution in Guyana, in spite of the fact that the Bureau of Statistics released some data in 2012 eventually. There was a major problem with the census. There are all kinds of rumors and speculation as to why the census was distorted. And my hunch, and I have, I should not be going with rumors. I mean, I have to base my stuff on facts, but I do have a hunch that some of this was deliberately created for precisely eliciting the kind of responses. So I think the census was deliberately manipulated to distort the numbers, to have a bigger middle ground. And we will know eventually when we have the next census. There are some other responses. Now, I am not saying that there are not people who are willing to vote over the divide. I'm just saying that there may not be large enough. They're not even large enough, like the Trinidad middle ground. There's a fairly large swing vote population in Trinidad.
Correct.
And even but if we assume that Guyana one day gets to the Trinidad situation, that is no panacea either, because they have serious problems right now, and they have always had this serious problem. As I keep telling people, if you look for a counterfactual as to where Guyana is likely to end up with the oil revenue, your closest counterfactual is likely to be Trinidad. Study Trinidad, look at Trinidad, and see how that country has also squandered its oil revenues, and largely, a lot of it was squandered through ethnic patronage. Lots of it, on both sides. So, but I do have a few other points to make with respect to this. Not only the census. I think the census is not credible. When the Vanderbilt University, when they do their polling, they actually they have 44%, 43 to 44% of the population would be the Indian vote. And LAPOP actually has, they also ask people how you vote depending on, and they will ask you, okay, identify yourself ethnically, and then how you vote. And there's a high correlation. East Indians, by and large, vote for the PPP. The African Guyanese population vote for the, let's say the PNC-APNO. The mixed population, the PPP typically gets about 20% of the mixed vote, according to the LAPOP polls, if we are to believe them, right? It's a random sample. So you're not wrong to say that the PPP is not getting crossover votes. But if the Indian population is 43, 42%, 44%, along with the Amerindian votes, you still have a large percentage of people who are losing, and they're mainly from another group, and that is really the problem.
Right.
And this is what breeds the discontents. And similarly, it works when the PPP lost the election. Now, the issue is another issue would be the yeah. So I am not convinced though that under the current structure, under the current system, getting this middle road, this middle ground, will completely fix that problem. And
Because
that's because of the Trinidad situation.
and because it happened once, didn't it? I mean, the 2011 election showed that there is a percentage of the population that is ready to listen to more pragmatic arguments about development of the country. What do you think, Professor? I mean, we're going a little bit out of the realm of economics, but it stays with your political economy. What do you think might be one of the holistic reasons that would have seen the swing, the loss of momentum from 2011 to 2020?
Well, the combination of factors. I think people also react emotionally to issues. Those swing voters, they might have showed a tremendous amount of rationality in breaking with the PPP in 2011. Moses Nagamutu, who, in spite of all his faults, he is a charismatic leader, or at least was a charismatic leader, a very eloquent public speaker. And so I think, so after 2011, I think you had a minority government, and the PPP should have used that moment. And I've actually said this publicly several times. Mr. Ramatar probably would have been president today had he governed differently, and lost the majority, went on to govern like he still has a majority. And this was the time when he should have been making concessions. He did not make those concessions. And as a result, emboldened the opposition more, added a lot of bitterness. We had 2015, in many ways, a very revolutionary election. The coalition won the election, marginally so. And we see tremendous amounts of mistakes by the Granger government from the very early mistakes, some of it deliberately so. Now with the obvious collusion between the administration and GECOM, we are beginning to understand why certain people were placed in certain positions by the Granger government. So there was perhaps no intention. There was a no good intention from the very beginning. Perhaps a lot of people admire Mr. Granger for being a nice man and he goes to church and so on. But I am toying with this idea as to whether his intentions were good from the very beginning. I don't have an answer yet. As more information, more data come out, I'll form an opinion on that. But as I toy on this question, it is obvious to me that there is collusion between the administration and the GECOM. The administration does not believe in free and fair elections. It does not believe in elections. It is saying that you need to have a different kind of model, governance model. Perhaps we don't need. But regardless of what, and I am sympathetic to that, by the way, I do support that we have to move the article you mentioned. This is the point it's making, but that is not sufficient. You still need elections. You just can't have these two behemoths divvying up the country amongst themselves. It means anybody who has some semblance of intelligence will be locked out of the society, right? This is exactly what will happen. And that is not an improvement from the current situation either. So tremendous mistakes were made, particularly after 2015, and then people went back to the base. And of course, we cannot discount what is interesting, because I would tell people that I consider Mr. Jagdeo to be a low-hanging mango, right? I cannot believe that the Granger government would make the kind of mistakes and made Mr. Jagdeo viable once again politically. It is unfathomable to me. He is a low-lying sapodilla. If I were campaigning against him, I mean, I think it's very easy to chew him up and spit him out like that. It's really not a problem, at least for me. But what I'm saying is, these guys just made one mistake after another, and they revitalized the PPP. In spite of all his mistakes, and the PPP came back strong. I mean, you got to give Mr. Jaglier his credit, the political credit. He came back in spite of weaknesses, and that is why. And so the population became divided. The Gaisuku issue, as you know, I'm not saying that Gaisuku was a viable industry. When if you read the stuff that I've written, I've always said that you have you cannot produce sugar at such a high cost, but there's a difference between sugar and sugar cane, and it was very evident that the government wanted to destroy the industry. This present government, it was very evident. There were viable alternatives. Sugar cane is a viable crop. It has many applications. You don't necessarily have to you did not need to make sugar with sugar cane. It's not the only thing. It goes into so many other industrial processes. And by its very nature, it employs more people than even the oil sector will employ in Guyana, right? So it's a historically important. It has many spin-off sectors. For example, heritage tourism could be a spin-off from a viable, well-run sugar industry. The polar system, the canal system is a very unique system globally. They all have a history and a story. You can have tour guides telling people about the story of this village, what took place here at this particular time, and so on and so on.
And Professor, talking about Gaisuku, I mean, again, this is where, the people like yourselves who are in the field of economics, I think also Clive Thomas, they looked at, as you said at the top of the program, the economic benefits. So Gaisuku was maintaining all the drainage and irrigation systems from Georgetown right down to Riverton. So when you look at closing down Gaisuku, you're looking at now those monies you were saying that you had to be bailing out Gaisuku for, now you're really feeling those expenses, sir.
Exactly. So? Yeah. One of the things that we forgot, Professor Thomas himself did not quite measure in his calculations of the cost, was Gaisuku did not only produce a private good, right? This is this is the point we've made over the years. The private good would be sugar, or molasses, but Gaisuku may produce a public good, and that public good is the drainage. The drainage it provided to the entire coastal plain, right? Well, large parts of the coastal plain where its estates exist, right? And that's a free service to the society. If anything, Gaisuku should also have been subsidized for that from the taxpayers.
There is the drainage and irrigation system. There would be the roads and in some of the housing sectors with the SILWF, the water, potable water wells. There was also the maybe abused healthcare system, but it provided a healthcare system, and it also provided the longer term things of pensions to its workers. So it kind of subsidized even beyond.
And it maintained community playgrounds. Cricket flourished. Interestingly, I saw an article in Starbuck News a few weeks ago, and they were talking about perhaps with Guyana is no longer making producing the kind of cricketers you had in the old days. One of the things that people have not really we have not considered clearly is the role Gaisuku played in some of this. Even if you go back to the 50s, the Kanais and so on, and even in more contemporary times. Chandra Paul would have played a lot of cricket in grounds maintained by Gaisuku and so on, and I actually mentioned this to somebody with the decline of Gaisuku. You will it's pity I didn't say this publicly, but you probably would see a decline in the quality of cricketers coming out to Guyana. I'm sure there are many other factors. It can't be a single factor. No, there's single factor don't explain every phenomenon, but Gaisuku had provided this social capital. Correct. And it doesn't mean that Gaisuku came from a pleasant history. Of course, the history was not good, but you just don't take it and complain and say and play a victim. You know, I don't really like this victimhood thing. I do believe people have to pull themselves up by the bootstrap, get up there and do something. And our leaders have shown very little inclinations to do that. You know, so
yeah. So, Professor, I want to just take you slightly to another track. Again, with reference to this article, which I found very interesting here, you have identified that the Guyanese public needs to be more educated. Maybe we all need to be more educated with regards to the sheer volume, the impact all revenues can have on this economy and this country. And you did say, I quote your article here, sir, production of 750,000 barrels per day is expected to provide an annual cash windfall to government of approximately 1.3 billion at the $35 price. And you said further, to put into context how significant this development is, total tax revenue in 2018 was 1.03 billion, while government expenditure was 1.18 billion. Now, why I want to take you back there, Professor, you know, has your calculation taken into account the near-term decline in oil revenue prices, and how do we still forge ahead then, sir? Because it is certainly felt, looking at the last IDB report, that Guyana probably has one of the best opportunities for a quick resurgence after COVID-19.
Yes. So in terms of the oil price, you know, it's a projection, it's a simulation, and I use $35 a barrel. You might say today I think the price was $24 a barrel. If I'm not, might not be completely accurate, but it's around 24. I use $35 a barrel because I feel in the long term, I say in the next year, over the next few years, I see when you have a shakeout in the shale industry in the U.S., I foresee the price getting up to between $35 to $50 continually. It's going to be around there, and there are several factors why I'm making that call. But I decided that let's use the worst case for the long term, which is $35.
Okay.
I don't think this current low price will continue. I think it will very well go back to $35 later this year, next year, particularly next year when demand picks up.
But so, you did caution that for Guyana to really benefit from this, we need to be extremely careful that we separate the oil revenues and keep, to quote a fancy new term that everybody's using nowadays, to keep an eagle's eye on those revenues so that they're not subsumed into political capital and political goodwill earning kind of.
Yeah, well, one of the points I made in the article, so if you might have seen the announcements probably 3 months ago, perhaps 3-4 months. I think both the Minister of Finance is a good man. I mean, I think Mr. Jordan means well, and Dr. Ganga means well as well. But what they decided to do, it might have been an interim strategy, where you deposit the money in the New York Fed. Now, it sounds good in the public domain because, you know, that's really where the international reserves of the central bank is kept. I mean, all central banks keep their reserves and some of their gold in the New York Fed. But what that risks doing is, it should be in a sovereign wealth fund, not in the New York Fed, but in a sovereign wealth fund, in a well-diversified portfolio of assets. But then again, none of this was done. I mean, Guyana, we couldn't get the contract right because it's because of the political disunity. The sovereign wealth fund is not ready. Imagine, the contract tells you how many years ago that you will be paid, your profit oil will be in barrels of oil, not in dollars. And now you're finding somebody to sell to. I mean, you got to be kidding me, right? So it shows, and a lot of this is coming because of the disunity. Our leaders are only thinking about how to outdo the other one, how to outsmart, outcon the other one, how I can entrench myself in power to make sure the other one doesn't get in. And as a result, all these critical things were not done. So what Dr. Ganga and Mr. Jordan did was to think they're doing something to favor Guyana, doing something good for Guyana. They put the money in the New York Fed. Indeed, the money is safe. Well, partially so, but here is why. The money's not going to be stolen, but here's how the money can be withered away. if you do that and it gets combined with the international reserves of the central bank, you see, when a country, this is in monetary economics, when you run a lot of deficits and you money finance your spending like public service wages and so on, which, you know, the public sector wage bill is increasing to 8-9% of GDP right now. And a lot of this is actually financed through printing money. What happens is this money creates consumption, and this consumption is really for imported goods. There are people buying on Amazon and all this thing, right? And how do you pay for this? Well, the central bank has to sell the foreign exchange to the market. So people can, so the money is you think it's safe in your favor, it has to be recycled to satisfy the voracious demand in the economy for foreign goods, right? So this is, so we did not, the country did not fix any of these structural matters, largely because these leaders, as I said, are spending time thinking how to fix the system so that it can benefit themselves and a small group of people so that's the point I was making there. And it's a serious problem because, you know, I just list two things there, that and the issue that we now figuring out who will buy this oil.
Correct. Yeah, that is ridiculous. Leonard, I know you wanted to ask Professor something.
Yes, a few days back we had Joel Bagwin and another economist making the statements that he believes that COVID-19 is a blessing. It stops something, the spendings, the Wild West spendings, and it's a blessing in disguise, and it saved this country. I want to ask the professor whether is indeed his thoughts as to whether COVID-19 and elections 2020 has saved this economy.
I don't know about the elections saving the economy, because the elections as a whole, that's a whole different story. You know, this election has really set back Guyana in a very far way. I mean, I don't see Guyana having an election for a very long time to come. At least if this GECOM, this structure, this electoral machinery stays in place. You can't have elections. You can't trust the machinery anymore. So perhaps this is part of the whole process to make sure that we don't have elections going forward. But COVID, whether COVID was a blessing, I mean, look, I mean, people are dying, and I don't think, I want to say it's a blessing. I mean, a lot of unfortunate people are dying from this disease. But I think Mr. Bagwin is making a very important point. And the point is that because of the shutdown, it will not only curtail jobs and incomes, it has to curtail consumption. Correct. So it might very well get the societies to stand back and ask some questions, you know, hopefully when people are social distancing, being by themselves, perhaps practicing some mindfulness or asking these questions as to what is important, what should we be doing. So it may very well, it will definitely ease some of the foreign exchange demand pressure. It's likely. Right. As you guys were saying from the beginning, the oil industry is still pumping out this oil. Oil people are still coming in. So you're having that production, whereas consumption is going up. What that means is that you should see a rise in savings in the short term in Guyana. And the rise in savings is actually a good thing, because it means the money will be there for future investments, hopefully. Or perhaps it could be so, Professor, go on Amazon and buy a lot of stuff.
I want to take you right back to politics, if you don't mind. And I know our discussion has been very short. It's only a couple of minutes because we have this 1 hour timeline, of which 15 minutes we dedicate to an update from the Artisan Convention Center. So we are waiting to be joined by Mr. Sase Gunraj in a couple of minutes. Well, Professor, unavoidably, we can't avoid talking about politics. Sir, you were a member of the AFC. Why did you turn your back on Guyanese politics?
You know, I didn't find it. I actually I didn't find it particularly. Guyanese politics became boring because there's nothing interesting in the sense that, okay, I'm going to whip up a set of sentiments, and it's not about policies. It's not about let's try to address big issues. You know, it's not about that. It's how can I outsmart this person? And I'm like,
You're so right.
and you know, like I was telling somebody up to yesterday, you know, there's a problem. There's a view in Guyana that somebody is really smart when they can outsmart someone in a nefarious way, in a way to con them, you know, like, but this guy was telling me Mr. Bornham was so smart, and I was telling him, well, I think Chetty was smarter, because Chetty published about 8 or 9 books. And why did I say that? Not because, yes, he outfoxed Chetty on some important issues, but I don't call that smart. I mean, that's not smart. I mean, what's so smart about that? Smart is when you could come up with a new idea and solve some social system, create some new scientific breakthrough, you know, or come up with some fantastic novel or book that is selling like crazy. That's really what's smart, not to be able to outfox your best friend or your opponents, and not because the person could talk really well and got a smooth tongue. No, that's not smart. Smart for me is when you can have scientific breakthrough, you can solve problems, you can make the choice, let's change this damn constitution because it's doing us no good. That is genius. If you can now come up, mobilize a set of people, the people who study constitutions, the economists, right? The political scientists, the anthropologists, to work along with the legal drafters to come up with a new constitution. That will be smart. That will be brilliant. And
but Professor, it is true.
So the point I was making is I don't see that in the politics. It's a waste of time. But I supported and endorsed Mr. Granger. I think the country needed a change. But other than that, it's a waste of time. It's a complete waste of time. So it's a major disappointment. It's better to be in academia. Yeah, sorry about that.
But it is true that unfortunately Guyanese politics is one about, you know, how good you can ridicule somebody or talk them down, as we say in Guyana here, and it's less about policies, because unfortunately our leaders is very apical. You know, it's the leader that has to have the say, and it's the minister that has to be on TV to say certain things. So intelligentsia maybe has no real place, other than if you're a real loyalist or you got to sing with the choir. However, sir, there is a sentiment that you know, intelligent people have to continue to prosecute the wrongs and continue to ensure that they push for change. Will Professor Tarron Khemraj look to rejoin future development of Guyana, sir? Not necessarily in politics, but with regards to your expertise.
You know, I mean, I'm always open. I mean, I've worked with a lot of young guys. You know, there are a lot of people who are studying abroad, and I've been working with them. We generate ideas through publications. I don't have a formal association, but I've always been. There's a little economics group that we have. You know what is actually interesting. I've always said that I'm gonna when I become full professor, I'm gonna move back to Guyana, right? And I did become full professor 2 years ago, and I did move back to Guyana. And one of the reasons I did not move back to Guyana was because I was being told you're coming back because you see all this this oil. That's why, and I'm like, you know, you know, one of these days I may very well come back. And I said now that if this COVID is this bad, and if the oil industry is partially collapsed, yes, the price will rebound, but no way near the optimism like before, because there's several reasons for that. You know, if it would be good to come back when the country is on its knees, and I may very well come back.
Well, the truth is,
I want to be when I come back. I don't want anyone to say that I come back to Guyana to live because I'm hoping to. If I come back to Guyana, the only thing I'm interested in doing is academia. I'm not interested in being any big work. I'm not interested in. I want none of that because, you know. But I think it's very important to do research and to do this kind of stuff. I mean, ideas are very important.
Right, indeed. And the truth is, sir, that, I mean, as you rightly said, the political system has to change. Sooner rather than later, we have to change. if we are to really see the young men and women of this country step up to the plate, and also to attract the brains that would have left this country because of frustration or any reason. My final question to you, sir, is, and then I'll ask you for your final thoughts, of course, but my final question to you, sir, is, if you were to rate Guyana 1 to 10, with 1 being extremely bad, 10 being best, where do you see post-elections Guyana compared to the rest of the region in our ability to recover quickly?
Guyana will the aggregate output, the GDP or the gross national income will definitely grow faster in the region, largely because Guyana is now adding to its economy an industry that never existed. So you're going to have, I call it a level shift. You're shifting up to another level. So yes, in that sense, you have a recovery faster, largely because it's resource driven. The question is, if you shift a higher stationary state, the question is, do you have a sustained growth from there, right? After you have matured, when the oil production, all the numbers you talked about earlier from the article is based on the assumption that we get up to 750,000 tons, 750,000 barrels, so per day. So if we don't get there, we don't get that amount. But what I'm saying is, look, Guyana exports continually about 700 to 800 million dollars of US dollars of gold every year. Huh? I mean, let's not forget that. So there's a lot of gold exports. It hasn't had the kind of bang for the buck on the development of the country. So yes, in terms of the recovery, in terms of the GDP and the growth rate, it's going to be faster than the entire Caribbean, one of the fastest. The question is, how is that money shared? If it's used efficiently, what is happening to jobs, broad-based job creation, which, by the way, we don't know because the Bureau of Statistics does not give us the kind of data of accurate labor market statistics. But you can have a hunch, you can have an idea if people working or not. So I'm going to concede that the pickup will be fast, but it's largely because this new sector is added to the economy, which is a good thing. But we will. But yes, I'll close on that because your other guest is here.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Professor. It's been a pleasure to have you here, and I would certainly want us to continue this conversation. Any final comments before we say good night, sir?
Thanks to everyone. Thanks to you for inviting me again, and everyone be safe. Stay home. You have to social distance. Take this thing seriously. Do not wear your mask. Wash your hands a lot. Do what the doctors are saying. Don't and everyone will be fine. And it's a good night. And you guys, I look forward to being on again in the future.
Thank you, sir. Professor, thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, as we say good night to our Professor Tarron Khemraj, who has, given us quite an eye-opening on how the economy is being viewed, especially with regards to this thing about opportunity comparison. When you talk about spending $100, you don't talk about spending it, but you talk about what else you could have bought with it as a comparative value. And therefore, that's how you see when a party, and here we have Mr. Sase Gunraj joining us at the right time. Welcome, sir. Commissioner Sase Gunraj. Mr. Tarron Khemraj was just telling us that unfortunately in Guyana, the cost of losing an election is extremely high because of what people would have done with all the revenues and so forth. But sir, thank you for coming on again. We know we brought to you, we asked you this favor of joining us to give us an update, and I'm going to hand the microphones right over to you, sir.
Thank you, Yog. Thank you to your viewers. Just confirm that you're hearing me well before I proceed. Okay. All right. Gentlemen, good evening, and good evening to your viewers as well. Never a dull moment at GECOM, and we've taken our spicy activities to the Artichoke Conference Center. Earlier on this evening, we were met with the news that there are several fire engines on the location, and there were firemen scampering around with fire extinguishers in their hands. Thankfully, it seems to have been a false alarm, but we admire and we appreciate the promptness of the response and the alertness of the fire officials. I understand that they were reacting to a smell of smoke or something like that. I appreciate the fact as well that it's a the place in the country now that all eyes are on, and we really appreciate the fact that there's that prompt response. And as far as I'm aware, currently we've been given all clear. So
good.
We're now on day 8. Day 8, the first day of the second week. My information is that the close of play today there were 56 boxes counted. That, of course, is the highest number of boxes per day that has been counted. And with the exception of yesterday, there has been a steady increase in the number of boxes counted. You'd also be aware overnight. Of course, you didn't get an update last evening,
right?
But the last evening the report would have been that the commission met and we decided that we were going to explore the possibility of opening up some new workstations. This, of course, came at a time when the first week was being completed, and we did indicate in the order that was published that by the end of the first week we will do a review of the process and look at a review of the duration. So some of the things we came up with yesterday are three issues actually. One, that we explore the possibility of additional workstations. Two, we'll explore the possibility of, well, the other two, the second one was that the documents that were being checked in the boxes, some of it was totally relevant. For example, and this is the example I've been using all the time, I spoke about it in the last program. For example, you're counting the number of folios that were returned. Totally useless, totally irrelevant, just a waste of time. And I hear persons talking about us advocating for reduced scrutiny. It's certainly not reduced scrutiny.
Right.
The understanding is that if there's an anomaly found in a box that requires further exploration or further inquiry, that further inquiry will in no way, shape, or form be denied. The same goes, for example, with the scanning of the ballots. It was decided even before this process started that we'd have random scanning of the ballots. That has been done, and persons. I hear some persons complaining, well, we should scan all the ballots. It's going to be a time-consuming exercise. There's never been any complaints about the authenticity of the ballots. So
right.
we scan ballots randomly. In the event that an issue is detected, then of course we could scan all of them in a box. No issue there. Those two. The third issue, we're trying to implement a quota system. You'll be very familiar with this in your previous places of employ. We assign a total number of boxes to be completed a day. There's an incentive to being efficient and finishing them in a timely manner at the end of the day. Those three proposals are being mulled right now. The first one with the increase in the number of workstations, it was our intention to have the COVID task force visit and determine the availability, etc. of these. COVID task force did not turn up today, and I have my own views. I've spoken to the media earlier on about these matters. We shouldn't be consulting COVID task force. We should have public health officials advising us, and we should be advising or informing the COVID task force, this is what we intend to do. Because the reality is, the persons who are in charge of the COVID task force are the very persons who are seeking office or re-election out of these elections process. So it is patently unfair and unjust to have them stand as a judge in their own cause or fetter the impartiality or of our process. Right. So those are the issues. Those are the issues that we, and of course, finally, and this has to do as well with the COVID task force. Carter Center. Carter Center seems to have been champing at the bit to return, but are not getting clearance from the said same COVID task force. And I've just said what my views are on that. And I want to quickly touch, when I'm talking about Carter, the Carter Center EOM, Electoral Observer Mission. I want to touch quite briefly on, I know you're going to ask me, so I'm preempting you on all of these things. I know you're going to ask me about the report to the OAS General Assembly today.
Yes.
What the report was is nothing that is different from what we observed with our own eyes. Right, the entire narration, all of it is something. Are events that we observed with our own eyes happening, and I just saw. I didn't get an opportunity to read it, but I skimmed through a moment ago. I see a press release from one of the stakeholders seeking to assail that report. One wonders whether in the thinking or the rationale behind assailing that report has anything to do with the prevention of the Carter team from returning. Right? I mean, it begs the question.
So, Mr. Gunraj, just quickly though, based on what Kaiser News would have released yesterday, Leonard, correct me if I'm wrong, it is the president who instructed the foreign affairs person to write that the airports are closed for the Carter Center, but we know as of today, flights came in for ExxonMobil people. So you're right. And the other thing I want to quickly highlight that you said, that the entire COVID task force is a political body. They're not necessarily vested health-wise because they're the ones seeking office.
Exactly. It's controlled. It's controlled by political persons. And it's quite easy. We don't want you here. We block your arrival. Plain and simple. We get what we want.
But Commissioner, how do you feel? How does Mr. Sase Gunraj, a citizen of Guyana, not Mr. Commissioner, how does Mr. Sase Gunraj, a citizen of Guyana, feel when you hear the words, "I have never seen a more transparent effort to alter the result of an election"?
I wonder whether the Honorable Bruce Golding was reading my mind. I have been singing this all weekend, that the only thing that is transparent in this process, the only thing that is transparent is to derail the electoral process. I've said that over and over. I heard earlier on, I was listening when your other guest was on, Dr. Khemraj, and he said that he made the reference earlier to the effect of the decimation of Gaisuko on cricket and our ability to produce players. And he said he said it to someone, but he wished he had written it or said it publicly. I'm now sharing a similar regret to Dr. Khemraj because it's something that I've said right. and I've thought about and said privately all along.
So, Commissioner, I want to share this bit of information with you. From the last time you were on giving us this update to now, we ran a private poll. This is not Kaiser News. This is Yog Mahadeo who did a private poll. Well, not private, but a public poll, but not adopted or endorsed by any news media. And in this poll, we asked the population, will the elections 2020 recount get to its completion or will it be aborted? And I must tell you that we got 81% of the voters voted that it will be aborted. I then asked, do you think, if it is aborted, do you think that Claudette Singh will use Mingo's declaration that is still on the website? And 64% of the persons said that maybe the declaration will still be used, while a strong 35% said no, it can never be used. So the population's confidence that this recount will be completed is not anything more than 15% to 18%, sir. You want to comment on that?
You seem to have drowned me in statistics there. I've look without having specific reference to statistics and the views of the persons out there. I've heard the general heads on which you've gathered statistics, and I'll say this: it is my considered view that this process will be concluded. I am not going to inject negativity into the process.
Okay, got you.
As I see it, today we have done, today, I think at the end of today, we have input 350 boxes. I don't know what percent that is, but I think it pushes us to a strong 15% or so.
Right. But Commissioner, the numbers that are showing this lack of confidence is not naysaying, it is really the lack of confidence we have in GECOM. I mean, that's what it translates to.
I agree with you. I agree with you, and I'm getting to that. And I'll say this before I say what I believe. If I was standing on the outside, I probably would have felt so as well. But as I've said before, I go to that convention center every day. I walk around that convention center all the time. Like I said the other day, I rotate between stations 1 to 10, 10 to 1. I sit in the tabulation center. I interact with persons who are part of this process. I interact with agents, as in party representatives from all the parties, from all of the parties, from the PPP, the PNC, to TCI, TNM, URP, right. ANUG, every one of the persons, every single one I interact with. I interact with the highest level of persons. I interact with the lowest level of persons. I interact with everyone. And I can tell you, the general sentiment among at least 90% of the persons is a positive, genuine desire to have this process completed and completed in a timely and efficient manner.
Correct.
You have some of the hardliners who believe that they can pull rabbits out of the hat every day and derail the process. But you know what? Those persons are quickly becoming in the minority. And while I'm not at liberty to disclose the identities of persons who give me the assurance that they understand what the outcome of this process will be, because they know, and the nation knows what the results of these elections are. And in excess, perhaps, of the 80% of those persons with whom I interact tell me that we are engaged in a superfluous exercise. We should not have been here. So I have confidence that persons want to get this behind them. I have confidence that persons will be diligent in the exercise of their respective functions in getting this process done, and we'll get there, and we'll get there soon.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Leonard, any question for Commissioner, says Gunraj?
Obviously, one of the things that I'm sitting here, I feel as if I'm an out of body kind of experience. Mutiny of the Bounty. There's a captain, and then the pirate, the crew members decided that they're gonna come up and if you read the book. But what you have happening here, I have a surreal feeling. The commission is there. There's a secretariat, and I do believe he has been coming to us saying day in and day out what has been happening at GECOM there. But you just get a feeling every single day. What are we doing? It seems as if this situation is running away from us. I'm not feeling so good about it tonight. The commissioner might be feeling a little good. I'm not feeling so good about it tonight.
Well, Mr. Gunraj, just to let you know, sir, because I know that your days are consumed, days and nights, with your job and your duty towards this nation, as with everybody else at the Artichoke Convention Center. But just to let you know, sir, Mr. Gildarie and I, we are on radio every day and every night. And there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of that. All their eyes, all their attention is focused totally on what is happening with these elections. And so, sir, you're echoing that optimism really echoes the optimism of the nation. Everybody wants to see, well, most people wants to see this process over and done with and behind us. The final question I want to ask you, sir, when you said that the commission was looking at increasing the number of workstations, that would have come after the first week of trial. Is there increase of workstation meant to retain the 25 days, or were there any immediate acceptance that there is a give on the 25 days notwithstanding?
I believe that, and I've said this before, there must be a give or take in the 25 days. We got to be pragmatic. Unless we do something drastically different, triple the number of workstations or something, or double it or something, we will not achieve that 25 days. And I believe it is a discussion that we've had, which a mature discussion we've had on it, if I can so describe it. Mm-hmm. But we're looking to take steps. We're looking to take steps that will bring it as closely as possible to that 25 days, if it's not there. But Leonard, you've taken me to fairy tale land, perhaps, with the mutiny on the HMS Bounty, right? But I would want to leave, in addition to assuaging the anxiety of the nation, and perhaps imbue a little bit more optimism. But I'd want to draw from another one of the good books that we'd read. Not the very good books like Yog reads, but one of the fictions that we read as kids, and the Charlotte's Web. And it says it is deeply satisfying to win a prize in front of a lot of people. The prize that Guyanese are winning is democracy. Yes. And all eyes are on GECOM. So that prize that they speak about in Charlotte's Web is something for all of Guyana. And all of us are looking, and it's a prize for all of us.
Correct. Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome.
Any final thoughts from you, Commissioner? What we are certainly hoping, and I would like if you could pass on our message from Room 592 to the entire Commission. All eyes are on you guys, but we wish you well in saying that all eyes are on you, and we're certainly looking forward for things to move at a rapid pace ahead. What are your final thoughts?
I share your view. We are hoping that we can increase the pace. The presence of the forces notwithstanding, but we will look at it. You've seen my post this evening. I have theories that, like you do, that are attributable to the increase or decrease in the pace, but we're looking at it, and we're looking at the trends, and hopefully this all ends well as quickly as possible in the favor of the Guyanese people.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, there you have GECOM Commissioner Mr. Sase Gunraj, who, he has been very kind to us at Room 592 to give us an update, at least on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And we certainly look forward, Commissioner, to having your presence here with us on Friday, sir, as we wrap up the week with our 592 program then. Thank you so much, Commissioner.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, you too. And ladies and gentlemen, as we bring our program to its conclusion tonight, I want to thank you all for joining us at room 592. Tomorrow night, we are going to give you a special election update, and our guest will be Mr. Shaz Ali from the TCI. He will be joining us tomorrow night. We also have a special lineup on Friday. Next week, Monday, I want to let you know, Leonard, I like to tell everybody what we're doing. We're very transparent here. Next week, Monday, we're going to have some experts with us to discuss, some matters regarding the environment, what's happening with oil, because ladies and gentlemen, while we're focused on the elections and on COVID, we need to know what is being slipping with regards to the environment and what the oil companies and so forth are doing. People are seeing some drafts on top of the water. We want to discuss all of that. And so that will be a packed program, an interesting program on Monday. But next week also, Leonard, I'm hoping, I've also already spoken to somebody from the People's Progressive Party Civic, asked them to come because a lot of people, I, for one, I'm sick and tired about hearing, this thing about so many deaths under the PPP's government. I would like to really litigate that matter. Would like to have them, come to the microphone and let's talk about whether indeed, what they can speak about the persons that, there's so much claim about persons who died under the PPP's watch. So we have invited them to come on board and talk about that. We're awaiting a response. And in the meantime, though, ladies and gentlemen, we also have been speaking to, and we are very open to all of you. We are very open to persons on the government side, on the opposition side, the new party side. Everybody know that you have a space to come represent your interests, whether it's environment, economic, political, in room 592. But let's talk about what's happening tomorrow, 2 o'clock, Leonard, at Elections Watch and COVID Watch.
Well, we will continue to do what we are doing. As you know, we've pushed it back to 1:30. Today, the phone lines were ringing off the hook, literally. So tomorrow we continue the same thing. Today we would have had the U.S. ambassador on the program, and she would have answered a variety of issues from sanctions down to whether the U.S. embassy and the foreign envoys are overstepping the boundaries when it comes to the sovereignty of this country. And of course, there's this very interesting statement not too long that came out from the APNO AFC side, which has blasted Bruce Golden. I'm not sure whether we have the time to read it, but it's basically saying that they don't put too much mind on what he's saying, that he's friends to Bar Jagdeo, and he would have been, he's gone to Bar Jagdeo's home, and his credibility is not very much up there. So the coalition, and if you are not familiar with what came out of Bruce Golden today, he is, I think he was a lead observer for the OS team for the March the 2nd elections, and he would have said, and that statement that you made a little earlier, Yoga, is the one that caught my attention too, which is a transparent, one of the best transparent attempt that he's seen to what's the word?
You mean with the transparency
yes,
thing?
to alter.
Yeah,
I think alter.
I've never seen a more transparent effort to alter the result of an election.
Elections, and so he would have said that. So so here it is. The coalition is hitting back at him in a very big way.
I'm sorry to cut. I've shared that video on my Facebook page. So in case anybody wants to have a look at it, please go. It's there on my Facebook page. And Leonard, before I let you go, ladies and gentlemen, viewers, listeners, tomorrow we continue our program, and I will be joining Mr. Gildarie tomorrow at 1:30. My apologies for not being there today, but sometimes we have to pay heed to family and all of that. Those of you who would have seen, Anita has been posting some real nice recipes and food, so I can't miss out sometimes, So it's all been good, and today I want to just close this program saying happy birthday to little Arya, my son, and to all those of you who have celebrated your birthday and your anniversaries today. Happy anniversary, happy birthday. Let me say, Leonard, I've invited someone to join us tomorrow on our program. Somebody who said that they were called, their home was called by someone to find out if the person indeed is dead. that voted, but happily the person is alive and well and answered the phone. And we're hoping to get him on the program tomorrow. But we're certainly looking forward for a good program, 1:30 tomorrow, to discuss all the matters and the questions that have been around. Ladies and gentlemen, do remember, send us your Facebook messages, send us your WhatsApp messages, inbox me, call me, write me, and we will be reading some of your concerns out here on at room 592 and also on Mr. Leonard Gildarie's election watch and COVID watch during the day. So, Leonard, any final thoughts, sir?
Well, other than today, it was a very packed day, and of course, we thank all those persons who would have joined us. 56 boxes counted today. According to Commissioner Sase, Gunraj is the highest so far. However, it's not very much up there where they want to be. They are looking at several options at the moment, including maybe put more days other than the 25 days or increase the number of counting stations. So I think tomorrow there's going to be that health officials, those health authority officials who's probably going to be there to make a check around the place and see whether there are possibilities of putting more counting stations there at the convention center. So we are going to be examining that and others tomorrow. But obviously today was a good day too. Two persons who would have been there almost 2 months. A lady who's in her 20s and a daughter, and they are relatives to Ground Zero Ratna Babulal, that lady that first died from COVID-19. They would have gone home today, and you know the story of the suffering that they would have put out there on the Facebook and social media. But they have been tested free of COVID of the coronavirus, and they're home. So that's some good news. No further deaths. The numbers are climbing though. We have to pay attention.
And Leonard, just to underline that point you made, because I know one of our viewers asked today, they sent me an inbox message, and they have asked on the show tonight. So the little girl that would have been detained, or well, not detained, been quarantined for over 50 odd days, she is now free of the disease and she's gone home?
That is according to the mother. The mother would have gone to Facebook early very this morning, and she would have posted that thank God we're home. And then so they're back, and she would have been. It's very difficult. Nobody likes their liberty to be taken away.
Of course.
And so you're back home, and you say thank God. There's some good news finally.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Gildarie, thank you. I know we have gone beyond our time. My apologies to Mr. Kevin Smith. We have taken a little bit of your time, sir, but we wish to thank you. Guyana thanks you for doing your great job there as a technical guy and for setting up our meeting rooms and keeping us all, looking good and sounding good over radio, Facebook, and YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, do remember to join us again tomorrow at 1:30 on Kaito Radio for Elections Watch, COVID Watch, and tomorrow evening at 7:30 as we talk to Mr. Shaz Ali in room 592. Do have a wonderful evening. Stay safe, be blessed, and do some prayers for Guyana. Good night, one and all.
Good night. Good night, Yog.
Good night.